Good morning, gearheads. Welcome to Speed City on SiriusXM. We are getting ready for the Hungarian Grand Prix, the last Grand Prix before the summer break. And even though that summer break is only 3 weeks, if you've been doing Formula One all this time since the very get-go, they are in need of a little bit of respite, a little bit of rest, and a little bit of recuperation, because the second half of the season is expected to be just as fast and furious. And we have a championship on our hands, folks. No question about it. This is about as wide open as I've seen the World Championship in a long, long time. Jonathan Green here, stepping in for John Massengale. We've given him a weekend off. I know we're a bit soft, but never mind. Les Kaiser's here, and the one and only Bob Varsha, of course, joins us via Zoom. We'll also be having Chris Medland join us from the grid in Hungary. And the big news straight off the bat is the weather. Hungary's always a good race, but there's always a possibility of weather. We've already seen some in free practice 3, but it could be, yes, exactly that. I don't know about thunderclaps, but we could have some wet weather.
It was definitely very wet, and it did dry through some of the series. But this morning, looking at the same, we've got a storm approaching the circuit, so it should be interesting.
Well, the other big news, the other thunderclap, as it were, is we've had the news announced this weekend that Sebastian Vettel, four-time world champion, has announced his retirement. And I'm going to turn to my learned friend Bob Varsha for this. I remember young Vettel was the protege of one Michael Schumacher, and we all said, "Ooh, that's a heck of a mantle to have as a young man." And I remember him arriving at Bercy at the Race of Champions and annihilating the field along with Michael Schumacher, and he arrived in Gutso and has been around ever since. Bob, what are your thoughts on effectively Sebastian announcing now?
Well, I think Sebastian probably has taken a deep look inside himself. He's that kind of guy. He sees that the Aston Martin team that he signed with a couple of years ago is not making the progress he would like to have seen toward the front of the grid. And at age 35, having made all the money he could ever spend, I think he wants to go do something else. You know, I've been thinking about Sebastian a lot recently. His career has been interesting. I can remember when he came in as a replacement at BMW Sauber, standing in for Robert Kubica at the U.S. Grand Prix at Indianapolis in 2007. Who is this kid? 19 years old. He scores points in his first Grand Prix. And everybody thought, wow, what's this going to be like? He rose in meteoric fashion, went straight to Toro Rosso, gave them their first and thus far only pole and race win at Monza, mighty, intimidating Monza in the wet. And everybody thought, this guy is obviously the real deal. And then he went on to Red Bull. Still a very young man. He was the first to take a pole, to win, and do a lot of other things until the arrival of some of the more recent young stars, particularly Max Verstappen. But along the way, he showed the same kind of aggression and ruthlessness that made a lot of people think twice about Michael Schumacher. In fact, they had to invent rules to govern the way the guys were racing on track. He was brash. He was not afraid to voice his criticisms publicly, including his teammates, race control, no matter what it might happen to be. So for a long time there, he was a tough guy to like, despite his many successes, including those 4 world championships in which he dominated for Red Bull Racing. But in his 15 years, it occurs to me, in the big picture, we've had the opportunity to watch a young driver starting at age 19, maturing into a 35-year-old man who is a very different character than what he came into the sport as. He's much more thoughtful. He's much more committed. He's much more mature in the way he races, still aggressive, but with an overarching feeling that I am a part of a sport that means so much to so many people, and that deserves my respect as a competitor. So, he leaves the sport as a bit of an activist when it comes to equal rights, whether it be race or gender. He is an environmental activist. I think that's what we're going to see him get more involved in as time goes by. He's not afraid to go into countries like the Middle Eastern events in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and put on a rainbow shirt and say, everybody should get to love whoever they want to love. And, he is a very bold character, perhaps second only to Lewis Hamilton. So argue all you want. Time will tell whether Sebastian Vettel will go into the history books as one of the greatest of all time. Certainly, you can't argue with his numbers. Third highest total of wins, tied for the fourth highest total, I think I'm correct, in world championships, pole positions, podiums. He did it all. But whether his personality and the way he did it knocks him back from being considered with the Fangios and Hamiltons and Schumachers of the sport remains to be seen. But no question, we won't see the like of Sebastian Vettel for a while.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on that. I think he will be seen in that grand air simply because of the gentleman, and as you say, the more rounded article he is. He is a gentleman of the sport. His love of motorcycles and cars and the history of it. This season we've seen plenty of it. He's been driving Mansell's car, and he drove the 100-year Green P, and so on and so forth. I do think he is the complete article. Plus, he also sits for me in the one rarefied air that very few great drivers do, which is to pick the right moment for the right team. Schumacher did it with Ferrari, Hamilton did it with Mercedes, and there's no question that Vettel did it with Red Bull.
Exactly. And as far as what he's going to do, I don't think this will be the last we hear of him.
No.
Will he come back this strong to commit to this many weekends away from family? No. I don't think so. I think, he's got his 3 kids. He's going to hang out there. His wife, they apparently, it's a great family environment. He wants to, like I said, he's doing honeybees. Okay, great. Raise the honeybees. He's working on classic motorcycles.
Yeah.
He's building a collection of antique and classic motorcycles. I think that's, now why not? Gosh, I wish I could go live a passionate.
I often worry for modern athletes, especially in motorsport and in soccer, that they live and breathe the sport to the point where they get to 35 and they really don't know what to do next. They're kind of a little lost. They go into either management or be part of a team, but they just look at like a fish out of water, and none of them have the interests outside of the sport that they've loved. I'm not at all worried about Sebastian Vettel in that way.
No.
At all.
No.
I mean, he is one of those guys that whatever he wants to turn his hand at, he'll have fun and he'll be good at it.
Exactly.
Well, you're right, especially about that part. When athletes get on and retire, maybe they're not as good as they used to be, but that doesn't change their passion for what they do, that sort of visceral thrill they get by, dancing that fine line in a high-performance car, wringing its neck. I don't know how you replace that when a racing driver retires. That's why so many drivers, including my old colleague David Hobbs, who's up into his 80s now, will tell you, I never really retired. I didn't retire. There's always a chance. It's tough. What else do you do? I mean, take up bungee jumping off of tall buildings.
That's the problem, isn't it? The sport is so exhilarating and so demanding that there is no replacement. And that's why, as I said, I often worry about some of them, because obviously some of them go the wrong way and just cannot fulfill that adrenaline, that junkie kind of feel that you get on a Saturday, and they go through the motions. A lot of them do find TV and pundit work, which Vettel could do, and he's already been doing. And I'd love to see him. I think Rosberg has been a huge, as has Jenson Button, been a huge plus to be able to get his insight onto the sport. And I'd love to hear, especially in the next couple of years, what Vettel has to say about the current crop, having raced them all. I love the fact that the nice caveat to his whole career, he came in as the mentor, if you will, to Michael Schumacher, as being mentored by Michael Schumacher, the protege of Michael Schumacher. And he goes out as saying, I think my seat should be taken by Mick Schumacher. He's taken him under his wing, the son of Michael, and really does, I think, will be, from afar at least, mentoring Mick from here on in. And I think it's a lovely story, that, in many ways.
Oh, I think
who do we like to replace him?
That's,
not Mick.
Okay, let's move straight on to that. I want to get on to, obviously, this weekend, but that is the big question now. I believe there are 2 hot seats now available in Formula One, potentially one at Williams, where Latifi, we've been talking about it all season, and now, of course, a spare seat at Aston Martin alongside family Stroll. Not an easy place to be when the father runs the team and the son is the #1 driver as we speak today.
Oof. Yeah. I was watching a conversation online that was real interesting. I like watching what you folks put out online and some of these forums, and just to kind of stand back and watch. And Fernando Alonso was brought up, and in my mind, I immediately went, nope. And the reason is not necessarily what's taking place on the track. It's what's taking place in the garage in the administration building. I don't think Fernando Alonso wants to be around the emotional leadership of that team.
Well, and I don't know whether Lawrence Stroll wants to deal with the emotional leadership of Alonso. Ask Ron
Fernando
Dennis.
Alonso.
Fernando Alonso has been known to break the will of any team towards his won't, as he did with Hamilton effectively at McLaren, and he has done pretty much everywhere he's gone. He is a very, very strong character and a great world champion. I would not want to be sat in the opposite side of the garage to Fernando Alonso. Even at 41, he's still maintaining that awe
formidable
about him.
Yeah.
Well, go and answer your own question then, Bob. What do you think? Who do you think should be in that seat?
Well, it's an interesting situation. I'm not privy to where Aston Martin is in their extended timeline. They're going to have an enormous new factory at the Silverstone circuit. They keep adding and subtracting people as Lawrence Stroll continues to exact team management with an iron grip. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But I think they need a veteran, a driver who understands the car. There's a dearth of testing in Formula One. They need a driver who can suss out what the car is doing, tell the engineers very clearly, and suggest ways that they could fix it up. Alonso would qualify on that score. You want a current guy. I guess the point I'm getting at is that there's a lot of terrific young drivers banging on the door out there. Oscar Piastri, some of the young guys in the driver programs for Red Bull and Ferrari.
Well, we also have on the line from Hungary, no less, from Budapest. I thought I said it right for the first time. I won't get it right again. But Chris Medland's with us. Chris, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. How are we doing, team?
I'm very
Good
well.
day.
Good on you.
Hey, Chris.
I don't know if you've heard any of this discussion. We're obviously talking about Vettel. I suppose everybody else is. What's the vibe on the ground? What do they think will happen at Aston Martin?
Well, I've just moved to Aston Martin in the pit lane, actually, as you guys were talking about that. So I'm watching Vettel sort of prepare himself in the back of the garage for, we can say this every week, but his final Hungarian Grand Prix. And the talk really has been about, as you say, about who might replace him. In terms of, so Alpine and Fernando Alonso was one where I was like, well, it works for Alpine if Alonso goes to Aston Martin and Alpine get Piastri in there. But I don't think it works for Fernando Alonso with where Aston Martin are right now. So I think what's actually looking most likely from the one that fits the bill most of the current grid is Mick Schumacher, based on big surname, would come with sponsorship opportunities, would come with kind of PR opportunities, but not a driver that will overly rattle Lance's cage. And that is something that is a consideration for Lawrence Stroll. Now, I still think that's a little bit underwhelming in terms of where Aston Martin want to be. I think they need someone more experienced. But realistically, aside from Alonso, there's no one available right now. They'd need maybe movement at McLaren and then try and pick up Daniel Ricciardo. But again, I don't see Ricciardo leaving McLaren. So in a sense, Seb's kind of dropped them in a bit of a hole. They can't fill it with a like-for-like replacement of another Sebastian Vettel. It came together very last minute. It was Wednesday that he told the team, and the team were hoping he would stay put for next year. So, it's quite an intriguing one. The Nick de Vries shout was not a terrible one by any stretch there from Bob. But I just don't think, again, that he has the kind of gravitas that Aston Martin are going to want with the money they're investing and where they're trying to take that team to go from a four-time world champion to Nick de Vries. He just doesn't quite tick enough boxes. So, not a clear-cut decision right now, actually, that one.
The name I was going to vote for was Nico Hülkenberg.
Yeah, the Hulk, yeah.
I just felt like he's demonstrated awesome, even when he, stepped in, a little while back. He still showed great. He's good in the paddock. He's good in the car seat.
Yeah.
The teams generally like him.
Go on, Bob.
There's only one drawback to Hülkenberg, though, who seems like a terrific guy, got a great resume, but he has never closed the deal in Formula One.
Yeah.
With some great cars and some great opportunities. He's been there or thereabouts, but he has not won a Grand Prix. course, you could always go and sign one of Chip Ganassi's IndyCar drivers.
He has a plenty.
Woohoo.
That's a very good point, and they will come into play. We're going to talk about this throughout the day, I think. And if you're listening in, we obviously will be on before the race, and we'll also be on for an hour afterwards. So 512-643-5483 if you want to join the discussion. I will say this as we go to our first break. I think Lawrence Stroll does want a big name. There just isn't one available, including Ricciardo, because I don't think Ricciardo could bring the gravitas he wants. I'll leave it at that for you to discuss. Stay with us. You're listening to Speed City right here on SiriusXM.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
Welcome back. The Speed City F1 pre-show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. Welcome, everyone, and we're looking ahead to the Hungarian Grand Prix. We call this race traditionally the last race before the summer break because we do have a 3-week break before we head back into the maelstrom that is Spa and Monza and all the classics. And, of course, Austin, Texas coming very soon in October, and I think we're in for a doozy come that time. We had 400,000 last year. There's no reason why they won't come again, especially with this title definitely on the line, Les.
Oh, it's going to be exciting. But, I heard a term mentioned yesterday during quali that I didn't know. I got to turn to Chris to ask him. Chris, why are they calling this Monaco Without Walls?
Because there
True.
are no real long straights. I mean, the pit straight isn't short, but the grid, I'm still on it right now, and it's right back near the final corner. So even though it's a long run down to turn one that we'll see at the start of this race, it isn't actually that long a straight in total. And then after that, it's just non-stop, corner after corner. There's no time to take a break. So teams are running their highest downforce settings. They've got the highest downforce they can have on the car, big wings. And yeah, it's not about straight line speed. It's not about, who's got the quickest car in high speed corners. There's lots of mid and low speed corners. So essentially, it's like a lot of the characteristics are similar. Not quite as bumpy as Monaco, and yeah, you don't have the barriers quite as close, but it's the type of corner and the kind of minimum speeds that are similar.
Wow.
Now, the big story, if Vettel is not any bigger than that, but the big story, obviously, of the weekend so far here in Hungary is pole position because of two reasons. One, what Chris just described, which is the fact that it's very hard to overtake. This is an elbows-out circuit with very few places to overtake. So pole, if you're going to get a pole in Formula One, Hungary's a good bet because that gives you at least the thinking time to know that you only have to drive well and fast to not worry too much about people making ridiculous moves on you. Having said that, that could easily happen, especially in this new era. But Chris, first and foremost, we've got Russell on pole, which is the first time he's ever been there. The first time Mercedes have had a pole this season, which is pretty incredible. It isn't Lewis Hamilton. He's down in the boonies somewhere. But it's a big moment for Toto Wolff and the team, and especially for young George Russell. Delighted for him. And can he, given what I've just said, given the track, and more importantly, you're going to tell me the weather, how's it looking for our boy George?
There are curveballs in front of him. Let's put it that way. Because it is so windy right now, which is just a challenge anyway for these cars. They're very unsettled by the wind, but it is blowing through rain really quickly. So right now it's dry, but there's spots of rain that keep falling. Like I keep getting hit by them thinking, oh, it's starting to rain. And it's barely even drizzling just for a second, but this wind is blowing through these sort of clouds and these patches of rain. So I think there's a threat throughout this race of showers. In a sense, it's perfect. You can never be certain whether it's going to be fully wet, whether it's going to rain for long, whether it's going to be a short shower, whatever's going to happen. We're going to have strategists that stop looking at computers and start sticking their hands out on the pit wall, which I love.
Finger in the air. That's the old way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's how it's going to be today. But yeah, I think this is the windiest we've had all season. And I know that sounds, well, it's just wind, but genuinely, it really does unsettle these cars. So, yeah, tricky conditions, which in some senses, George probably doesn't want because, he's starting on pole. If he can get away in the lead, then he's got a chance of winning. But realistically, the way Mercedes have been this season, how they were on Friday, I'd be surprised if they had the dry pace to win the race, even if they stayed out front. Both Ferraris right behind them. So I think, in a sense, this could actually play into George's hands.
Yeah, good point. And Ferrari have finally got to play it correctly, too, because surely, I was listening to Checkered Flag last night, and all of they agreed that surely the time is right now, surely to let Leclerc go forward and challenge Verstappen, given that Verstappen is potentially not going to get as many points as he should do or normally would. And so this is a great opportunity for Ferrari, and they need to effectively employ Sainz to help Leclerc if that is possible during this race.
You know, free practice 3 to me showed probably what we're going to see today. Free practice 3 was a mix of wet and dry conditions. Winds were all over the place during free practice 3. Lots of excitement on course. I mean, besides the passing, I love seeing Fernando Alonso go full rallycross sideways and save his car, but not to be outdone, Charles Leclerc does a spin and win style 360 on course and continues. This is going to make it pretty chilling on what's going to happen today.
And Bob, it is an interesting grid because we've got some of the sort of title contenders. The big names are sort of 8th, 9th, and 10th, including Hamilton in 7th. It really is not the normal grid we'd expect from the form guide so far.
That's true. And just for the reason we pointed out earlier, this presents a huge opportunity for Ferrari to make up for some of the mishaps that they've suffered earlier in the season with both of their drivers right up there in the first 2 rows. You've got a great midfield fight going on. Should we go ahead and look at the starting grid right now?
Why? Do you know what, Bob? I'm tantalizingly waiting for your grid. Let's do it.
Okay, off we go. Starting at the front, and truth be told up front, I'm working on the Formula E weekend in London this weekend, London, I should say, and I totally missed qualifying. The most intriguing qualifying of the year thus far. Missed the whole damn thing. But I studied up on it. Here's what we've got. On the pole, for the first time in his career, George Russell for Mercedes. He becomes the 3rd first-time pole sitter this year, joining Checo Perez in Saudi Arabia and Carlos Sainz in Great Britain. Next to him, the aforementioned Carlos Sainz, and the first of the Ferraris who turned his Silverstone pole into a race victory. And it's the 3rd time this year he's out-qualified his teammate, Charles Leclerc. So I'll take issue with your point, Jonathan, that they have to have Sainz support Leclerc when the two guys are so close on performance and championship points. Anyway, on row 3, inside, Charles Leclerc, who has never won when he starts anywhere but the front row. Think about that for a moment. Next to him, the first of the McLarens in the hands of Lando Norris. After some rough going recently, he ties his and the team's best start of the year, and that came way back in Melbourne, which seems like 100 years ago. Next, on the inside of row 3, Esteban Ocon, and the first of the Alpines. Both of the Alpines in the top 6 for the first time this season. He is the defending race winner, and he's starting 3 spots higher than he did last year when he won the race, with the help of the man who starts next to him, his teammate, Fernando Alonso, who has his best starting position since Canada, although that was a damp race weekend, and contributes to this great midfield battle. In 7th, inside row 4, Lewis Hamilton. Neither Hamilton nor championship leader Max Verstappen is in the top 6, the first time that's happened since Bahrain back in 2018. Starting in the 8th spot, Valtteri Bottas, Hamilton's former teammate, now in the Alfa Romeo, who ends a sorry streak of 6 failures to advance out of Q2. So he's in position to have a good race today. 9, the inside of row 5, Daniel Ricciardo, the 2nd McLaren, contributing to that close battle between Alpine and McLaren. I think Alpine just snuck ahead of McLaren for 4th in the championship behind the big 3 teams in the most recent race. And next to him will be Max Verstappen, starting 10th. He lost power in Q3. If they've got that car fixed, Verstappen's going to come through this field like a tornado, and that'll be fun to watch. Red Bull have only one victory, however, from this far back on the starting grid, and that was Daniel Ricciardo in Azerbaijan back in 2017. Then Sergio Perez, Verstappen's teammate for Red Bull, starts 11th, missed out on Q3 for the 7th time in 9 visits to this track as the car continues to seemingly go away from Perez. I'm not sure how much of a factor Checo is going to be in this race. Outside row 6, Zhou Guanyu in the second Alpine, in the second Alpha, both Alfa Romeos in the top 12, despite neither of them breaking 180 miles an hour. They're 2 slowest cars in the traps, but they both qualified pretty well by their standards. Starting 13th, Kevin Magnussen in the first of the Haas cars. He's got the big one and only update package for the Haas team. He's got the only iteration. His teammate, Mick Schumacher, is going to have to wait for his. Doesn't seem to have helped all that much. He failed to reach Q2, did K-Mag. Starting 14th, outside row 7, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, who reached Q2 for the first time in 8 races. Starting 15th, Mick Schumacher in the second Haas. And as I mentioned, the old iteration of the race car, 15th on the grid for the 4th time this year. Next to him, Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri, matched his rookie year start at Hungary a year ago. Starting 17th, Alex Albon in the Williams, outqualified teammate Nick Latifi, despite the fact that Latifi was first in free practice 3 in the damp, fastest in the speed trap at 193 miles an hour, 3rd fastest through the first sector. And yet Albon outqualified him. 18th, to the sorrow of many, Sebastian Vettel in the second Aston Martin, who stunned everybody with his retirement announcement earlier this week, and then failed to reach Q3 at the Hungaroring for the first time since 2008, his second year in Formula One, his first full season. Starting 19th, Pierre Gasly in the second AlphaTauri. What is going on with the folks in Faenza, Italy? Those cars just seem to get worse and worse with each race. The 5th Q1 knockout and second in a row for Gasly, who, remember, is a race winner and considered one of the premier talents at the second level on the grid. And finally, 20th, the always enigmatic Nicholas Latifi in the second Williams. As I mentioned, a superstar in free practice 3, 3rd quick in the first sector, fastest in the speed trap, and stone last on the field.
Interesting grid. I mean, it really is. Good stuff, Bob. As always, thank you for that. We're about to take a short break again, but we are literally stirring up the cauldron that is a goulash from Hungary. Where's Verstappen? Where's the rain? Where on earth is Hamilton going to pop out? And can Russell hold on? Don't go away. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
Welcome back to our coverage of the Hungarian Grand Prix right here on Speed City on SiriusXM. And yes, Max Verstappen is the talk of the town in many ways because he's all the way down in 10th position. Had problems with his power unit yesterday in qualifying. Very frustrating. And as I agree with Bob, I think we'll see him, if all is well and good with that Red Bull Racing car, you'll see him scythe through the grid bit by bit, and it won't take him too long either. But we have a lot of stories going on right now, so let's go straight to the Hungaroring and join Chris Medland, where the wind is a-blowing, and we've got a lot to talk about, especially tyres.
We have.
Tell us, Chris.
We've got tyres, and I'm going to grab Mario Isola in a bit to talk tyres, but first we'll get a team's perspective. I've got Andreas Seidl here with me. We're on the second row, Andreas. I mean, Lando with a great job yesterday in qualifying. What can you realistically achieve today? Because as we look forward, 2 Ferraris are very quick, but then George Russell could be the cork in the bottle here.
Well, we need to see. Interesting bit will be how difficult it will be on this track to overtake with these new cars now. Yeah, we need to be realistic. I guess the 3 cars in front, if they do their normal job, it will be difficult to do anything. And then it will be interesting how these quick cars like Max or maybe also Lewis is coming through the field or not. But we had strong pace on Friday, so we will fight for the position we're in. look for opportunities to move forward as well, and then we see how it goes.
Where's that strong pace come from?
I think the team did a great job with the upgrade package that we brought to France. Then we used the last 5 days really to further optimize it, better understand it. And I guess that's what we were seeing here from Friday onwards, that we could make another step. And I'm very pleased with that. Also good to have Daniel in the top 10 as well. So everything is set for good points today, and that's the objective.
But it doesn't look like it'll be simple with this weather. It's sort of spitting at times, very windy. And the hard tyre doesn't look like it's going to be much fun today. So what are you thinking strategy-wise?
Yeah, on paper, it's somewhere in between the 1 and 2 stop. A lot of unknowns, because obviously the data we collected on Friday have been collected during completely different ambient conditions. So it was a lot hotter. So we need to see actually how it goes in the first 10 laps. We need to see, is it possible to manage tires? How much do you have to use the tires to defend maybe? Or how much do you burn your tires by trying to attack? And then need to make a decision, 1 or 2 stop.
Does that mean starting on the soft though to make sure you've got a bit of temperature because it's cold?
We will see shortly.
That's a knowing smile. Andreas, thank you very much. They never want to tell you their strategy, do they? But I tried.
Good effort, Chris. Yeah. And I wonder if these cooler conditions, I mean, you mentioned that you just heard it there, that hard tire has just not been working. And does that play into your strategy guide that you do so brilliantly on F1 Pro? Because it has sort of thrown things up in the air a bit, hasn't it?
It does. It does a little. I'm actually looking around now for Mario Isola to see if he will tell me what he's thinking strategy-wise. And this grid's got busy and I can't see him. So I spoke to him yesterday for that strategy guide. And he did admit that when they came here, I found him now, actually. He's talking to a Ferrari engineer, but he did admit they were expecting it to be better than it has been. So I'll see if I can quickly grab a word. Mario, thank you very much. These conditions are nothing like we saw on Friday. They're nothing like we saw even yesterday, really, with the rain. What can we expect strategy-wise today, do you think?
If I compare to the data collected on Friday, the hard should slide more because of the condition. The track is green. With the soft, you have an advantage in grip. The only point that nobody knows is if they have a grading or not on the soft. So the medium for sure is the best compound for the race in this condition, but then they have to choose one or the other. And if you go to the soft, it's probably 2 stops. If you decide to fit the hard, you can try a 1-stop race.
So do you think the quickest way would be soft, medium, medium to the end still, which is what we discussed yesterday?
There is also the possibility to have a soft, medium, soft again, even if they don't have a lot of new soft available. But we know from yesterday that the grip recovery of the soft compound is quite good. So also tires that have been used can be used again.
And we've got a bit of rain around as well, though. So the soft tire better to be on if it's sprinkling. Like right now, it feels like it might rain.
It's so difficult now there is chance of rain, as you said at the beginning of the race. Probably the soft in raining condition is the best option because of the working range that is lower compared to medium and the hard. But they have to bet on one compound.
Just finally, why will teams not want to use the hard tire today?
No, I believe that somebody will use the hard tire because talking to the teams, nobody knows exactly what they are going to do. But if somebody from the back is starting on the hard, he will be the reference driver for everybody else.
But it's going to be hard to get that thing warmed up, isn't it, in these conditions? Be very hard to get the tire warmed up in these conditions.
Yeah, especially on the hard, of course.
We'll see how it goes, Mario. Thank you very much.
Excellent stuff, Chris. And by the way, we're loving your tunes as well. Clearly keeping up. Are you grooving to those tunes as you beeble around the pit lane?
Yeah, I'm dancing while I'm interviewing people.
Good man.
Here. And it's there's a DJ on the podium right now.
Oh my word!
That's exactly where that music's coming from. So it's you can't avoid the noise, I'm afraid, on that front. It will get loud with cars soon. We'll get a few fire-ups in the not too distant future. But
Chris,
then I'm going to try and move back to row 3 because we've just done Mario Isola, who can tell us about tyres. We've done someone on row 2 and Andreas Seidl, but if I time this right, and I am loitering, Otmar Szafnauer is here, and he has both of his cars on row 3, which, as Bob mentioned when he ran through the grid, Esteban Ocon won this race last year, and here he is in 5th place. I mean, he just keeps doing it. He keeps putting the car in about 5th or 6th every weekend. It's very, very impressive. to see that he's got this consistency. So I'm going to put that to Otmar in just a second. He's currently talking to Nicholas Tombatsis from the FIA. So I get the feeling there's a bit of a technical discussion going on there. Even if we are on the grid, every opportunity that teams have just to get their opinion across or say what they're thinking in terms of the floor changes for next year or anything like that, they'll just lobby. That's what they'll be talking about.
While you're waiting,
now.
Chris, just confirm for our viewers and our listeners, Pierre Gasly will start pit lane, yeah?
Yes, Pierre Gasly will be in the pit lane, although I haven't gone to the back of the grid to make sure he's not there. But because AlphaTauri changed his power unit components without telling the FIA in advance, then that's a pit lane start because you've broken Parc Fermé regulations.
Okay.
So that's where that one comes down. But here we go. So I'm going to grab Otmar quickly. Otmar, you're braver than me because you're wearing a polo shirt and nothing else. And I've got 3 layers on in this wind and cold. But what are you expecting from today's race? It's looking very, very unpredictable right now.
Yeah, well, the weather's unpredictable, and that will probably make the racing a little bit less predictable. So let's see what we can do. We got to score good points with both of them, and we're in a good starting position to do that.
Absolutely. You've locked out the 3rd row. I mean, you seem very, very consistent at the moment. Is it sort of a happy place in Alpine right now, or do you hate to see a McLaren in front of you?
Well, both. It's a happy place at Alpine, and we hate to see a McLaren in front of us. So a bit of both.
Can you get that McLaren today, do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
And what is it about this track, do you think, that suits the team? I know you weren't here last year, but Esteban won this race last year.
Yeah, well, maybe the track suits me. Esteban won. We finished 2nd last year. So I don't know. It's we seem to go well here. We didn't think so at the beginning of the year, but we've updated the car, and now even in slow to medium speed corners, we're pretty good.
Just finally, 1 stop or 2 stops?
That's a good question.
It's worth a go.
Nice try. Very good. Lots to talk about. What's your take? We were saying that Verstappen should fly through the grid, but I mean, is everything all correct at Red Bull? Have they got the car they need underneath them?
I believe so. I mean, one thing that we're mentioning about Pierre Gasly starting in the pit lane, that's because he's also exceeded power unit components when they've changed basically his whole engine. Red Bull have done the same with both cars, but they weren't going to exceed limits. So it's within their existing allocation.
Gotcha.
So both Red Bulls have new fresh power units in their cars, which should help a little bit. They can push them a bit harder as long as everything runs smoothly. Hopefully we'll have covered off any issues. In fact, I tell you what, there's one person who will be able to answer this much better than I can, would be the Red Bull team principal, Christian Horner, who is currently loitering between both cars back here on row 5 and row 6. Christian, we're not used to seeing you so far back here. How does it feel to be this far back?
Well, it's the result of a bad day yesterday, but, it's windy, it's cold, there's a bit of rain in the air. Anything can happen. So, hopefully we can have a good race and, make some progress.
Fresh power units in both cars. Do you think that will really have much of an impact here on this type of track?
No, not really. I think it's more a precautionary change than anything else. So, obviously the engines are homologated. So, and because it's the 3rd power unit, there was no penalty. So it just made sense to take that change.
Yeah, and you mentioned the weather strategy. You're in the middle of the pack. Any nerves about the start of the race and getting through cleanly?
Always, even at the front of the pack. I mean, I remember last year. So, doesn't matter where you are here.
So what's the realistic target from here, 10th and 11th on the grid?
I think if we, top 5, would be a good result today.
And I guess a George Russell win for you would be good.
Well, for once, I wouldn't mind if a Mercedes won. So there you go.
Thank you, Christian.
Good stuff, Chris. Just
That's
also
hilarious.
Give us an idea. I mean, for those who've never been to the Hungaroring, I love this place. It is described as a Monaco without walls, and there's every reason for that. But it's a real cauldron-like atmosphere, and the Hungarians love their racing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, right now it's national anthem time here, so they've all just stood up around me, and we're at the sort of exit of the final corner on the grid here, and you can look down over most of the track behind you.
Yeah.
The way that it's kind of in a natural bowl means that you can see most of the circuit. You can certainly see most of the fans that are lining the circuit, which is very, very cool. You do feel completely attached to the whole venue, which isn't always the case. You go, even if I say somewhere like Silverstone, we talked not that long ago about what a great crowd there was there, but the way that's so flat and spread out, you feel like you're in totally different parts of the circuit when you're at one corner or the other. Here, you feel like it's all just one big, massive amphitheatre. So it's a very, very cool setup. And yeah, they love it here. We get a lot of people traveling from the Netherlands, from Central Europe. Kimi used to have a lot of fans come down from Finland for this race. So it's always very, very lively. Right now, they're being very respectful, actually, and I apologize to them for talking through their national anthem. But as soon as that's done, I think there's going to be a bit of a party here because, yeah, they've been enjoying the sights and sounds of Budapest over the past couple of nights.
Well, listen, we wouldn't want to get you in trouble. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, Budapest is a fabulous city. And this track, much like Monaco, about which everybody always says, if Monaco didn't exist, you couldn't invent it. The same goes for the Hungaroring. When I arrived in Formula One in 1989, it was the 4th year for this race at Hungaroring. I'd never been there. You entered the track up a dirt road. I kid you not.
Yeah.
Pedestrians, cars, everybody just wobbling up the road. You got into the racetrack, very limited parking, an infield that was totally overgrown. And I found out later that it was because when the developers built the track, they were able to acquire all the land around one central plot, which was owned by a nice old lady who would not sell it for one reason or another. So all of the photographers were really upset because they couldn't crisscross the racetrack because you had to go through this tangled forest to do so. We weren't allowed to fly a helicopter for the onboard cameras or anything else because it was still a part of the Soviet Union at that point.
That's right.
Security was very tight. The cops were all bribable. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. The city was magnificent but kind of dingy. Years later, when we came back, the wall had fallen, Soviet Union was gone, and Budapest was just a shining example of a beautiful city on the Danube. It is now, but the racetrack remains an anomaly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're going to take a short break again, but I'm going to tell you about how to get out of the Hungaroring Formula One style, which I have done a couple of times. Don't know if Chris still does it, but it is something that is eye-opening for sure. Stay with us. You're listening to Speed City right here on SiriusXM.
Hello to everyone, this is Gunther Steiner, this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
Welcome back. CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60. Our digital world is more than just interconnected, it's interdependent. And because of that, security is a top concern for every organization. The Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team knows they're a potential target for a host of digital attacks, which is why they leveraged the CrowdStrike Falcon platform to deploy end-to-end security solutions. CrowdStrike revolutionized cybersecurity by harnessing the speed and power of the cloud to identify and stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. Our cloud-native Falcon platform protects and defends organizations against increasingly complex threats, so you can have the peace of mind to focus on your business momentum, not what's trying to stop it. That's protection that powers you. To learn more, try CrowdStrike Falcon free today. Visit crowdstrike.com/XM. Welcome back as we look ahead to the Hungarian Grand Prix, and it's starting to shape up nicely. We've got Chris Medland down on the grid. There's all sorts going on, including spits of rain, but the big story is the man just about to launch himself from the grid is George Russell. A massive moment with just over 9 minutes to go from the get-go. Big, big day for this young British man. And Chris, what's the latest down there on the ground?
I'm just seeing if I can try and muscle in a second an interview with Toto Wolff, who is speaking to Formula One. But it is starting to spit with rain more heavily, which is interesting. And I did just grab Mattia Binotto because one of the birdies in my ear told me there might be some clutch issues for Ferrari. He dismissed that off the record, but he looked surprised I asked. But at the same time, he's not going to turn around and say, oh, yeah, definitely we're struggling, because that's info that rivals might use. So,
yes.
I don't know whether to fully believe him. I just said the look on Charles Leclerc's face a little while ago told me that something wasn't quite right. But we'll have to wait and see. Any clutch issues there could cost them off the line. So we'll have to keep an eye on how Ferrari starts. I'm just going to see if there's time to, if I can very quickly just ask Toto one very quick question. Toto, George on pole. Can he win this race today? Do you have the car to do it?
I don't know. We didn't expect to win fourth, so let's see what goes today.
You told us in France, expect the opposite of what we expect.
Yeah, that's what we always need to do what we don't expect to do.
It's going to win then. So yes, he nodded as he walked off. That there now it is going to be a win. So it's so hard to read Mercedes at the moment. We'll see how they do go from here. But that will be music to their ears if there's an issue for Ferrari. So Mattia Binotto is now actually staring at the Mercedes on pole. He's trying to see if he wants to get any inspiration from it. I mean, Ferrari, every team on this grid must be thinking, where did that pace come from? What's in that car that means they can do that to us? So it'll be really interesting to see if that pace that was there yesterday for Russell is there today in these conditions in the race. I mean, that will set up the second half of the season beautifully, but will leave a lot of head scratching from the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull.
Yeah, Chris, that was my question. I mean, does anything tell you over the last 3 days that Mercedes have that pace for the full race? Lewis didn't seem that confident that the car was that good over the long distance.
Yeah, no, nothing has, to be honest, because Friday was a disaster for Mercedes, really. They tried to put a brave face on it, but they were nowhere in terms of short run pace or long run pace. That was in very different conditions. It was a lot hotter. But yeah, they were not expecting it at all to turn around the way it did over one lap. And then what they did, though, was turn the car upside down overnight from Friday to Saturday. But then because FP3 was wet, they never got to see if that long run pace would be any better in the dry. So this is a complete unknown for them right now. It's an unknown for most teams because it's so much colder, windier, wetter. Even if they'll be starting on slicks, but it is still spitting with rain. So these conditions are totally the polar opposite. I mean, temperature-wise, we're talking high 90s on Friday. Now we're looking at low 70s. So yeah, it's been a big swing, and I don't think any team can be confident in their long-run pace right now.
Well, listen, Chris, we'll see if you can find anybody else, but I do want to get a word in from the world champion. A big day for him. He's got a massive lead of over 60 points at the moment, but he starts down where he shouldn't be, really, a long way down in 10th position. Here's Max Verstappen on what happened in qualifying.
Everything seemed to go wrong.
Yeah, I think we made some changes which were very positive. So a lot of guys here and back at the factory were analyzing a lot of the stuff, and I think they understood, and that's of course very promising and very good. So the car was a lot nicer to drive today. But somehow we couldn't really show it, of course, in Q3 because of the power issue. I still don't really know what it is, so I need to talk to the team, but I hope, of course, everything is fixable.
How much of a concern is it for tomorrow, and can you take some of the changes you made today as hope that you can rescue something tomorrow?
I mean, the track will be quite similar in terms of temp. I know this track is very hard to pass, so we have to be patient as well. But anything can happen, I think this year has shown that a lot of things can happen even on a Sunday, so just have to be patient.
Okay, so good luck.
This is a virtue. It certainly is at the Hungaroring. And yes, I think now they've got a new unit in there. And Chris, last thoughts from you. Obviously, we're getting down to D-Day and the start of the race. What's your prediction on today?
Oh, I tell you, I'm going to go George Russell to win because it's so uncertain right now. We've seen Ferrari mess up strong positions, let's be honest. Second and third is a good starting point, but it's raining a bit more heavily right now. Drivers are going to be in their cars and going to be nervous what they're seeing on their visors. It's still dry, the surface isn't getting wet, but it is spitting with rain and it's cold. So it only has to get slightly harder and it's going to get really greasy. These are perfect conditions for a complete chaotic race. I am so excited right now, I won't lie.
I couldn't agree more. Bob, obviously, there's a lot going on this grid, not what we've come to expect. It's the Hungaroring. It's always a question mark, and the weather's up there. What's your take?
Well, as you point out, it's always a goulash here. You always get surprising results. I'm going to say Carlos Sainz to win, George Russell second, and Max Verstappen third. I think Verstappen's going to come through the field. Red Bull has, as you know, an enviable reliability record this year. I think it's going to be a good race and an interesting result for the championship.
And I like what you said, because I was picking up off Five Live's coverage on Checkered Flag about how Charles Leclerc should be given free rein and Sainz should help him. You disagree, right?
I do, absolutely. I mean, Sainz is close enough to his teammate in the championship. There's so much to race for yet. Recall Silverstone, where Sainz pleaded with the team, do not invent situations, do not structure this. I'm quick, I can win this race. He did. So, I think we'll see that new Carlos Sainz today in this race.
Yeah, and the other fella went out while leading last time, he says.
Yep.
Come on, Les, what are you thinking?
I'm throwing a wrench in y'all's soup there. Sainz, Norris, Hamilton with Max in fourth, one step off. I think Russell and Leclerc are both going to meet their fate today, unfortunately, around not finish this race.
Well, Chris, before you, I don't know where you are now, but I'm sure they've shuffled you off. Has any last thoughts, especially on the weather? No, we've lost him. He's gone.
No, I think he's gone.
He's in a storm. One more try. No, we've lost him. Oh,
There.
good. I'll tell you what, I'll give you my prediction. I'm a bit of a romantic, as you know, and I would say as we celebrate Sebastian Vettel leaving the sport, I say we welcome the future of the sport, which is George Russell. No question about it. There's a whole bunch of guys like Russell, like Norris, like Albon, who've all grown up together. They all raced against each other, Verstappen included. This is the new look of Formula One, the new mantle, if you will. And today is the coming of age for Boy George. I say Boy George wins it, followed by Norris, followed by Leclerc. How about that?
If he wins it, he will be Saint George. And thank you for a second there. I thought you were going to say Sebastian Vettel is going to win the race.
Yeah,
no.
What's your take, Bob, last minute on what we've heard about strategy? Will Hamilton, for example, try something a little bit different to try to see if he can move up the grid?
Well, it's interesting as Pirelli's numbers show that a lot of teams are flat out of the grippiest red soft compound. The mediums are once again the tire to have. The hards have let everybody down, and we heard Mario Isola say it's not going to work for you in the long run, and that's a big part of people's strategy. So who knows? Expect to see a little of everything.
I'm looking at drops of rain, Les. As the umbrellas are taken down off the drivers' helmets, you can see it on the visors.
I'm saying it's going to be a medium, intermediate, soft race.
I love it. Well, listen, my thanks once again to Chris Medland. We'll hear from him after the race. We'd like to hear from you. Don't forget, 512-643-5483 to join the conversation on the Hungarian Grand Prix. My thanks to Bob Varsha. We may or may not hear from him afterwards. He's a busy lad. And of course, Les Kaiser. John Massingale is on holiday, bless his cottons. And we are getting ready for what should be a really, really interesting last race before the summer break. This is the Hungarian Grand Prix. Let's turn our attention to the race and BBC 5 Live.